right now. And okay, we are recording. So this is our fourth session on Falling Upward by Richard Rohr for the sake of the recording. And I was lobbied yesterday to change the format a little bit in terms of the way that we go about doing the read through. And so I thought, oh, it's a good idea. If you want to call it a complaint, or the suggestion is that when we're reading such small little bites, maybe a sentence or two, that it really gets kind of disjointed, and it's harder to find the flow. And we're also maybe going through too slowly and getting lost in the weeds, that sort of thing. So what we're going to do tonight, and we'll just see how it works. The suggestion was to read maybe 2 to 3 pages to kind of get the flow and the context. And then we'll stop, and then we'll go back and get some impressions from you. And if after 3 pages we stop and it's just crickets out there, then I will go back and just bring some of the passages up that I have found of interest to me, and we can maybe start and have some discussion on those. But let's see if we can get a little bit more continuity and a little bit more flow tonight, and see how it goes, and then see how you like it. See if this is a better way for us to go through the book. Any thoughts or comments on that, or anything else before we get started? I got a thumbs up from Judy, so that's good.
I don't like change, but I'll
Gonna see a good counselor for that, William.
It's okay, William. I'll try to be gentle with you, man. All right. We'll
We have some good therapists in the group.
Adapt, William, adapt.
I appreciate that.
These nines, I don't know.
I know.
This is why we really missed you last night, William. Okay, let's go to, this is going to be page 15 in Roman numerals, XV.
Mhm.
This is where we left off last week.
It's different because
Yeah.
this is big.
We're still in the introduction. All right, so let's settle in and we'll read, let's see, where did I had an idea where I wanted to break. Maybe we're going to read right to the next section, the way up and the way down, and then we'll stop and start to break it apart a little bit. I want to go back one paragraph from where we left off. So the first full paragraph on page XV. It is when we begin to pay attention and seek integrity precisely in the task within the task that we begin to move from the first to the second half of our own lives. Integrity largely has to do with purifying our intentions and a growing honesty about our actual motives. It's hard work. Most often, we don't pay attention to that inner task until we've had some kind of fall or failure in our outer tasks. This pattern is invariably true for reasons I have yet to fathom. Life, if we are honest about it, is made up of many failings and fallings amidst all our hopeful growing and achieving. Those failings and fallings must be there for a purpose that neither culture nor church has fully understood. Most of us find all failure bewildering, but it doesn't have to be. My observations tell me that if we can clarify the common sequencing, staging, and direction of life's arc a bit more, many practical questions and dilemmas will be resolved. That doesn't mean we can avoid the journey itself. Each of us still has to walk it for ourselves before we get the big picture of human life. Maybe we should call this book Tips for the Road, a sort of roadside assistance program. Or perhaps it's like a medical brochure that describes the possible symptoms of a future heart attack. Reading it when you're well may feel like a waste of time, but it could make the difference between life and death if a heart attack actually happens. My assumption is that the second half of your life will happen, although I hope it's not a heart attack, unless you understand heart attack symbolically, of course. When I say that you will enter the second half of life, I don't mean it in a strictly chronological way. Some young people, especially those who have learned from early suffering, are already there. And some older folks are still quite childish. If you are still in the first half of your life chronologically or spiritually, I would hope that this book will offer you some good guidance, warnings, limits, permissions, and a lot of possibilities. If you're in the second half of life already, I hope that this book will at least assure you that you're not crazy and also give you some hearty bread for your whole journey. None of us go into our spiritual maturity completely of our own accord or by a totally free choice. We are led by mystery, which religious people rightly call grace. Most of us have to be cajoled or seduced into it, or we fall into it by some kind of transgression, believe it or not. Like Jacob finding his birthright through cunning and Esau losing his by failure. Those who walk the full and entire journey are considered called or chosen in the Bible, perhaps fated or destined in world mythology and literature. But always they are the ones who have heard some deep invitation to something more and set out to find it by both grace and daring. Most get little reassurance from others, or even have full confidence that they're totally right. Setting out is always a leap of faith, a risk in the deepest sense of the term, and yet an adventure too. The familiar and the habitual are so falsely reassuring, and most of us make our homes there permanently. The new is always, by definition, unfamiliar and untested. So God, life, destiny, suffering have to give us a push, usually a big one, or we will not go. Someone has to make clear to us that homes are not meant to be lived in, but only to be moved out from. Interesting statement there.
Mhm.
Most of us are never told that we can set out from the known and the familiar to take on a further journey. Our institutions and our expectations, including our churches, are almost entirely configured to encourage, support, reward, and validate the tasks of the first half of life. Shocking and disappointing, but I think it's true. We are more struggling to survive than to thrive, more just getting through or trying to get to the top than finding out what is really at the top or was already at the bottom. Thomas Merton, the American monk, pointed out that we may spend our whole life climbing the ladder of success, only to find when we get to the top that our ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. Most of us in the first half of life suspect that all is not fully working, and we are probably right. It was not meant to stand alone. We were just told to build a nice basement and some kind of foundation for our house, but not given any plans or even a hint that we also needed to build an actual living room upstairs, let alone a nutritious kitchen or an erotic bedroom, and much less our own chapel. So many, if not most of us, settle for the brick and mortar of first stage survival and never get to what I will be calling the unified field of life itself. As Bill Plotkin, a wise guide, puts it, many of us learn to do our survival dance, but we never get to our actual sacred dance. Okay, that is the most that has ever been read in a book study at the effect, ever.
Let's back up 22 pages.
All right. Why don't we do this? Let's open up. Any general impressions from having read that cropping up in anyone's mind, or anything that's stuck in your craw that you want to talk about right off the bat?
Sounds like maybe who wrote that has a lot of things that he or she still wants to become familiar with, or just go ahead and work with whatever they have right at present. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
You know, when I heard it, you know, I think sometimes first part of life, you almost become so anal or so worried about failure and comfort, you know. William and I like the you hate change, you hate that, but you know, this is sort of saying it's okay to fail. You learn from your failures. Those ups and downs is kind of a good thing, you know. So in a way, to me, one feeling I got was just a little bit of comfort in taking on the unknown and failing, and really not looking at it as black and white or failure, but just part of the learning lesson or the necessary steps to proceed. Anyway, that was a kind of a general flavor.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I notated here too. And what he didn't say it outright, but what he's implying and what I have come to realize myself is that in the task within the task, that deeper task, there's no failure in the deeper task. The failures that we perceive are in the outer task, right? It's in first half of life tasks. Those we fail at. The deeper task, as long as we're present, there's not really failure there. And in fact, the failures in the first half of life tasks and the outer tasks are what propel us to the second half of life. And they're absolutely essential. They're absolutely essential. We spend all our time trying to have a mistake-free life, a failure-free life. If we ever could succeed in that, which of course is impossible, but if we could, we would completely subvert the whole reason that we're here, our purpose. Now, I love that saying from the program that I say all the time: we progress at the pace of pain. It is the pain, it is the failure that propels us forward. Nobody gets off the dime when they're feeling good about things or are content with their environment and circumstances. But just add a little push here at the knees and things change. So it's kind of backwards the way we look at it. And I don't know if that's what you were kind of driving at, Doug, but that's part of what Jesus is always trying to do, to turn things around 180 degrees so we can see it from the other face. If we could see how necessary the failures are, I think we'd have less fear in failing and more of a sense of adventure in just putting the pedal to the metal and see what happens.
What was interesting, I listened to something today on like a little podcast, a little mini podcast, and it was talking about, this girl was talking about failure. And so she was saying how her father, when she was making mistakes and so on and so forth in life, he would praise her. Great job. Hey, no problems. Hey, that's really great. And anytime she made a mistake, he went over the top to make sure she knew how wonderful it was. It was good that you did it, so on and so forth. And she said, what I didn't realize until later on in life is what he did is he conditioned me to realize that failure is okay. Where the failure is not to do it, not to try. But as long as you're trying, as long as you're moving forward in life, that the failure is not to. If you make a mistake, things go wrong, that's okay. Those are learning experiences. But the real failure comes not from making a mistake or something going wrong. It's not trying, not moving forward. Found that interesting.
No, I think that's perfect.
Too.
I've been rereading. I've just been rereading the book Dune by Frank Herbert because the movie came out and everything. Did you know that he finished that novel after 5 years in 1965? He was rejected by publishers 23 times before a publisher finally picked it up. 23 times. Now, even that sounds like a lot to us just listening to it, but think of the experience of that. Just rejection after rejection after rejection after you spend 5-6 years writing this book, and then to finally have it catch and then become what it became. I just hope those other 23 publishers were really gnashing their teeth. That's all. All right, Brady.
I was just thinking in the same vein, and in regards to what I was talking about here. I mean, it seems pretty clear that what he's saying is that what matters to us in that first half of life, everything we're building up, is that to learn in the second half of life that none of that matters. And that by learning that none of that matters is to learn what matters. It's like when you fail, the failure in that particular thing is not the issue. It's what do you learn by failure? What do you learn by trying and not? getting there. It's the task within the task. Anyway.
Amen to that too.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
What impressed me, Dave, what I highlighted is, and this is where I'm at, setting out is always a leap of faith, a risk in the deepest sense of the term, and yet an adventure. You know, I took a leap of faith as I've started this new real estate, you know, late in life. And in my second half, most of us are never told that we can set out from the known and the familiar to take on a further journey. And, you know, I was very comfortable in, you know, where I was, but to go out and jump in this unfamiliar and fail. You know, I liked what you said, Frank, about, you know, I'm going to fail. I'm going to get rejection. I'm going to get people that are going to tell me no. And that's okay, because each one, you know, they tell you, you have to have so many failures or so many rejections before you get that yes. And that's just the nature of the business. The other thing I liked was we are more struggling to survive than to thrive. And that's where I was. Let me just thrive, you know, let me just survive, you know. Well, now I want to thrive. I want to thrive. More than just getting through or trying to get to the top, than finding out I love this. What is really at the top was already at the bottom. And then I love with Thomas Merton that I might be leaning up against the wrong wall all this time. That was classic. So it's like, it just hit me, you know, that's in my second half that, you know, I'm going on faith. I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to recognize that I had the ladder on the wrong wall for a while, and it's time to change walls. Is how I see it, to make it simple. So that's what I got out of it.
Good stuff.
For me, the familiar and the habitual are so falsely reassuring. You know, that paragraph struck out to me because, you know, when you come from a chaotic background, you know, you're just trying to look normal on the outside. And I remember my mother, you know, it was so chaotic at home and we had to dress well for church and, you know, just so that everybody looked okay, you know, and I carried that into my young adult life. And so I just remember saying, I just want to be normal, because I just felt like, you know, everybody was moving on in life and that I was missing life lessons, because inside I felt so abnormal, you know, that something was wrong with me. And so, so I do have a tendency to find comfort in the familiar, the everyday stuff, you know, and I don't adjust well to change. So that's been a challenge that I've had in my life to move out from and to take more risks.
Everybody likes the habitual and the familiar and the comfort, and everybody, maybe not as much as William, doesn't like change. I mean, that's just baked into the cake right there. But I love the line that he ends that paragraph with. Someone has to make clear to us that homes were not meant to be lived in, but only to be moved out from. It's a great point. You know, there's a whole section in the book of Numbers in the Old Testament, which is chronicling all the various legs of the journey that the Israelites were on. And every one of them begins with, they set out. It doesn't talk about the destination. It talks about the place that they set out from. They set out from, they set out from, they set out from, they set out from. There's like 20 or 30 of these legs of the journey. And it's always they set out from. You know, I have no idea if whoever was writing that was thinking along these lines, but it just kind of struck me when I read that line, because I remember that passage in scripture. You know, it's all just where they started from. And so it's really interesting thought there. But, you know, for some of us who have moved a lot in our lives, you know, it's like every house that we're in, to a certain extent, is temporary. You know, the longest house we lived in was 17 years, but we've been gone for 5 now, and we're in this place for 5. And so we think of things as being permanent because it's the moment that we're in, and it's always temporary, it's always changing. And to flow with that change is going to make all the difference. And then from there, he flows into that our institutions and our expectations, including our churches, are almost entirely configured to encourage, support, reward, validate the task of the first half of life. And I don't know what your experience is in your churches and in other institutions in your life, or even your families, but that certainly is true in my experience. Anybody else have the same or different? And it's ironically sad that our churches would still be focused on the first half of life tasks. Because who else is supposed to give us some ballast here? Who's supposed to provide some balance, if not our churches and our religious institutions? But they're not doing it, not by and large.
I see that in particular since I've moved to Tennessee, because I've looked at several churches. I go where my kids go, they go to 2 different churches, and then I've gone to others. And it is, and I'm looking for a mature group. And it doesn't cater to it. You know, from the music to the word to the greeters. It's very much geared towards more of a Hillsong, Jesus culture, which I love. They're wonderful, but it's not the maturity. It's not the depth that I hope to find at the second half of my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not there. So where are you guys? Y'all want to come to Tennessee? I mean, I go in and I get it and I love the Lord and I'm happy for them, but I'm not connecting, you know, especially coming out of Rhema school, which is my background, and a church that I went to for 12 years, in particular when Jeff was alive. You know, he was so severely disabled. To walk in there and have all these very mature, sound believers holding him up, not in pity, but looking at him and speaking to him through the eyes of God as if he were completely whole. There's a big difference walking into an environment like that. Yeah. And that's when I just planted the stake and said, this is where I want to be. I want to be with people who love us through the eyes of God, not, oh my gosh, what happened to you? Not that it wouldn't come out, but we had a long haul to go when we first got there. So I'm grateful to have had the experience. Let's just say.
I'd like to read a quote real quickly because it comes to mind, especially in regards to the second half of life. This is and many of you may know this. This is a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the beauty in others, to leave the world a better place, whether it be by a healthy child, a garden patch, or redeemed social condition, to know that one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded."
Nice.
That's not the first half of the life stuff.
No. Beautiful, beautiful. Now contrast those values and that outlook, you know, with a church that is always focused on growth, that always looking to build, and is always looking to bring in money, and that they're following a quote unquote prosperity gospel. So the line is that we're all supposed to be prosperous materially. God wants us to be prosperous. I mean, those are such first half of life sentiments. And it's not that the church doesn't need to grow, and it's not that the church doesn't need to have donations come in. But when that is such a focus, then the kind of value system that Emerson is talking about, or we're talking about, or Rohr's talking about, really gets lost in the shuffle. And everything is about still building the platform, building the institution, rather than finding the quiet spaces within. And of course, that's what the effect has tried to be for 15 years. But look how small we are. You know, some kind of balance would be nice, I suppose. But it's a hard balance to strike.
It's the narrow road, Dave.
You got that right.
Well, I'm inviting people. I've invited a lot of people. They're going to be joining me. I know they'll come.
Thank you, Sandy. Spread the word.
They're going to be in this Zoom. They need it. I'm not going to keep enabling them. They have to be here.
Well, it's not just who's here. It's what we learn and it's how we live because of what we're learning and what we're experiencing here. And then how we touch others. And each one of us touches who knows how many others. And among those who may be affected or somehow gifted by what any one of us brings, all of those that they touch and all of those that they touch.
Mhm.
So I don't see this as a small group.
Mhm.
I've been sharing it out. I have for sure, quoting. I know that this has been so valuable to me. And my twin sister, her husband has lived in the same home for 40 years and he wanted to downsize, and she just went along with whatever he wanted. And then once he moved out and sold the house in 24 hours, he's crying his eyes out. I don't know if I made a mistake, and why didn't you stop me? And it's just been hard. It's very traumatic, you know. Talk about moving out of the house. That's what they just did. And I just told him, I said, no, it's not about the house. I said, go watch the movie Up. The house goes up with balloons and goes everywhere. It's about the people in the house, not the house. So don't. And we have time to let go. It's fine.
Oh, that's a great story, Sandy. You know, it's so subtle and sneaky and insidious, this first half of life mindset. It just creeps up on us and you don't even realize you're engaged in it. But if we stop and think, you know, whenever we're judging, quote unquote, something, you know, a church service or a church or anything, the first thing we want to know, how many people were there, right? And then we're always looking at those kind of factors that speak to money, to facility, to growth, to power. We're always looking at those things, both in ourselves and in the institutions we're at. It is just so baked into our DNA that it's hard to really break through that. The thing that I'm so impressed with Jesus about is that he just seems to blow right through all of that. He is just as content or more content to talk to one person as he is to talk to multitudes on the beach. You know, it doesn't seem to even enter into his calculus. You know, I want to get more and more that way. And I have gotten better, I can say, over the years, but stone not yet smooth, you know? And it's like, can we see through all of that stuff? That second half of life is just as concerned with the one as it is with the 99, which is what Jesus was trying to get across to us. It's a whole different way of looking at things. And maybe it is, to a certain extent, a bit of a fire extinguisher to ambition, you know, but it doesn't have to be. If we can keep the balance, then we can keep doing the things that we need to grow first half of life, facilities and institutions, but not lose that sense of what this is all really about. And that's something that I'm really working at.
I know one institution that values the second half of life. I just want to share this real quick because one of my friends actually did this. But if you're over 60, you can go to Cal State schools for free.
Ooh. I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yes.
It's a beautiful thing.
So I just had to share that.
Is that both
Nice.
undergrad and
Thank you.
overgrad?
Well, my friend got a master's. He got his master's.
From For
I'm
free?
getting a doctorate just because if it's free, I just can't see doing it.
Mhm.
Health schools, yes.
Wow.
Something to think about.
Yeah.
That's
I might
my
have to move back.
How could you not? Free.
That's my alma mater anyway, Cal State system.
Dave, I was thinking about this moving out of the home thing and thinking about the other line about churches being a first half of life kind of phenomenon. And I think, we tend to, I don't know I think we talked about some of this the last time, but, becoming a good Christian, quote unquote Christian, is very much a first half of life thing. And I guess we can think of that as the house. And then the second half is moving out of the house, where you're bringing that spirituality to a different place, I suppose.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense to me. I think that's all I got for that.
Beth and I bought a house 20 years ago, and moved out of it 5 years, 6 years ago. And we talk about it occasionally. It was a wonderful home, beautiful home. But if ever we long for it, if there's ever any yearning for it, it's not the house, it's the memories, which we'll have forever. That house belongs to someone else. After them, it's going to belong to someone else. Eventually, it's just going to be dust. But the memories, the experiences, the relationships will last forever.
I'll tell my brother-in-law. He'll love that.
It's like when we moved, Dave, when we moved church and congregation, I remember having conversations with some people that were concerned about losing different people who were used to attending. And what we found out in the time we moved and then we ended up moving back is that the church isn't really the location, the physical street address. The church is the people. And so the church always remained in tight connection through all the adversity. And I think that's one of the beauties of what Christ teaches us, not to be so dependent on things, but to reconnect with people.
Yeah. A few people fell off the wagon train on the way here to there, but we did pretty well. Yeah. But William, that's so true about also the shape of what you were talking about. I mean, the Desert Fathers and Mothers followed that same shape, didn't they? They started out within the church, within the institution of the church, and then they moved out. So you start within the church, within the institution, and then you get to a point where if you're really going to take this seriously, you have to move out. Now it's not that you necessarily physically need to leave the congregation, but spiritually you have to be willing to leave the four walls of that institutional belief system if you're ever going to have something that's really your own personal theology, your own personal conviction. That's the only way you're going to get it is by traveling this journey yourself and then seeing if you circle back again to where you started. I should say, by the time you circle back to where you started, are you still home there or not? But that's you hit it right on. That's the shape of it. We've got to move out in order to find out where we really belong. That's second half of life stuff. And that leads right into on the previous page, near in the last paragraph. He says, that's page 14. He says, those who walk the full and entire journey are considered called or chosen in the Bible, perhaps fated or destined in world mythology and literature, but always they are the ones who have heard some deep invitation to something more, and set out to find it by both grace and daring. It's always bothered me in the Bible that the Jews were the chosen ones. Well, what about all the rest of those guys? What about me? Am I not chosen? And then Jesus says, many are called, but few are chosen. It always sounded like such an exclusive and kind of
Dave, you just froze on me for a second. I lost the last 2 seconds.
Oh, am I back? Am I back?
Gotcha, Dave.
I'm back live. Okay, so I was saying.
You're breaking up.
Still?
Not for me.
Not on my end.
Not for us.
Not for us. It's you,
Oh,
William.
it's just
Oh, you
Brooklyn.
problem
Too
child.
late.
Oh
Not
my
so
gosh.
good.
How can you be
Okay.
comfortable with this change? I don't know.
There's always one, William.
So William, I was saying that I've been uncomfortable with the Bible calling people chosen, or many are called and few are chosen, because then it's like this exclusive elitist club. But as I delve deeper into the underlying Hebrew and Aramaic meaning, what Jesus is really saying is many are called, but actually everyone is called, but few choose to be chosen. It's still up to us. We always look at God as the actor. He's choosing or he's not choosing. No, everybody is called. Are you willing to do what needs to be done in order to be chosen? That's up to us. It's always up to us. Ever since we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil as a child passing into the age of reason, it's up to us. And that's a whole different thing. So these kind of lines, they're called, they're chosen, they're fated or destined. No, it's the ones who answer the call to this deep invitation to something more and are willing to stay on the path and see it to its conclusion. That's the whole deal. I don't know, any other thoughts that you're thinking about?
Just, yeah, kind of, what goes through my mind, I think of Frank, when you were talking about the parent or friend or somebody who allowed the daughter to fail, and said, that was a good thing. It's, our entire educational work system is built on not failing. I mean, it's just cultural ingrained. I mean, to fail, a class when you're like in junior high or high school, which I didn't. I'm not that I couldn't have, because I probably could have, but it's just so baked. And so I do absolutely believe, and for me personally, I had to be pushed into, trauma and sickness and, losing everything and so forth. That had to happen for me because I was and part of this was my upbringing. You had to be perfect. You had to look good. Brady's family was all about that. And we were too, to a certain extent, not quite as bad as his.
Mine was bad.
But yeah, that it's just so, what if you fail in a job, you get fired, you lose income, that's a big freaking deal.
Right.
If you're a sole breadwinner. So I see the need, to be pushed, and a lot of people have to, and certainly we were, we've been in the depths, but it's sure been a good thing, and I would never go back.
Well, it was funny you should say that, Beth. I mean, I was having a conversation with my father, and I was telling him, for so long, going back to like either perfection or whatever you want to call it, I was always trying to push our business, and it's like, I look at myself or my role in the company as like a visionary. It's like I can see, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps ahead of everybody else. And my dad, my brother, they're more like here now. They're more like if we have a problem, we'll fix it, but we won't do the things that we need to do to head off the problem. So instead of like saying, hey, why don't we work smart and build systems in place? Why don't we do these things to try to get us to another level? We won't do that. Like a perfect example would be like when I told my dad, Dad, we have horrible customer service. And my dad's like, oh no, we have great customer service. If we have, if there's a problem and something goes wrong, we'll fix it. I said, no, that's not good customer service. What that is being ethical. If we do something wrong, we fix it. That's ethical. Good customer service would be thanking your customer once a month for, doing business with you. Good customer service would be asking them, hey, how's our product doing? Are you happy with our product? Is there anything I can do better? Doing surveys. That's being proactive. That's trying to build something. So where I go with this is, for so long, I've always been financially behind the 8 ball compared to my dad, compared to my brother. So that was part of probably a lot of my push and a lot of reasons why me and my dad and my brother bump heads all the time. And I finally told him the other day, it's like, I'm not in a place where I'm happy, joyful, and everything's wonderful. But I am also at a point where I realize I got it better than a lot of people. So, okay, maybe I need to realize that, one. And two, like my live stream is to get the heck out of California. I see this really nice, in fact, I'm looking at Zillow and this beautiful, nice houseboat on the river in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. And I thought, gosh, I could sell my house now. I could probably take all my money from the house and probably buy that house outright or pretty darn close to it. So bare minimum, maybe I have about $1,000 a month nut to crack. I can go get a job at as a Walmart greeter. I'd have no stress and my life would be perfect. Now, whether I'll do that or not, I don't know. But like I was telling my dad, I said, for so long, I was so fearful that our business would crash. I mean, for so long, I wanted it to succeed. I wanted us to be, $5, $6, $7 million company, because I know we could, with the product and the abilities, we could do this. But, they didn't want to go that route. Now I'm at a place in my life where it's like, well, I'm not going to purposely try to destroy our company, but probably one of the best things that could happen would be if our company just imploded right now and went away. Because my dad's set for life. He doesn't need money. My brother, it would force my brother to look at things differently. Maybe now I would have no other choice but to go chase after my true dreams and not just survive, not just, as Jerry was saying, just exist. That I would actually now go after and chase after my dreams, because now there's nothing holding me back. There's nothing keeping me here. It's like, okay, I was staying here for the job. I was staying here for the family business. I was staying here for my kids. Well, boy, if I just went ahead and started thinking about me now, I can move up there. I could still be here if there was an emergency for my kids or anything within a 4-hour flight. Or not even a 4-hour flight. I could probably catch a flight, get down here within 4 to 5 hours. Yeah, exactly, 2 hours. So with all the different airports, if somebody said, Dad, I need you now, it's like, I got to be able to think within 4 hours, I could find a flight that either would get me to LA, San Diego, Ontario, Orange County, Long Beach, even Burbank, and I could be down here. And worst scenario, 14-hour drive, I could be down here. So, it's just funny though, how we just will stay put, and it's sometimes it might be those failures that could actually be the blessings.
Well, I stay put, but I would just, based on what my brother-in-law and my sister just went through, I would like test the waters and do due diligence and spend a few weeks up there before you go sell the house. Give it a couple of months.
Yeah. Oh no, I realize that, because if I sell the house, I could never afford to live here again. That's like, I leave, I have to be willing to leave for good.
That's why everybody wants to be there. It's fabulous. Everybody here wants to be there. And you just, watch what you ask for. You might get it.
So one thing, interestingly enough, one thing to be clear about though, is that following our dreams or following our bliss is not necessarily second half of life work. Okay, it can still be just as much first half, but just more pleasurable. Because the truth of the matter is, second half of life work can be done whether you're here manning your business or whether you're a Walmart greeter in Portland. It just doesn't matter. The second half of life is completely separate from our circumstances or from any of that first half of life stuff. It's internal work. And it finds that task within the task wherever we are. So we want to make that clear too. You know,
Oh, no, I guess where I was going with that, Dave, though, was more or less, I'm now attached to it now. I mean,
That's-
before I was
okay.
fearful that this business would go under. And I'm not saying I want it to go under. I'm not like, oh, Lord, please take us down. No, but if it happens, I know I'll survive. I've already got ideas of what I can do. And so it's like, okay, this is going to be okay. You know, every so often the fear still pops in, and I just start doing a reality check and start realizing, wait a second, who's in control? God. Okay, wait, what's going on here? Here's what you can do. Here's it's out of your control. Let it go. And then boom, I'm back to normal again. And, back to saying, okay,
Now that's a second half of life attitude. Perfect. That's perfect, man. And that's why I say this thing is so sneaky. Trying to untangle these things sometimes is really difficult for us, especially at an emotional level, let alone an intellectual level, but getting clear on what we're talking about. And that's, I think, the last point that I'd like to make tonight, going back to page 15, right? So in the second full paragraph, he says his observations tell him that if we can clarify the common sequencing, staging, and direction of life's arc a bit more, many practical questions and dilemmas can be resolved. And that's really important. I've been pushing the hero's journey on y'all and rites of passage as two different ways of looking at the sequencing, staging, and direction of life's arc. The Paschal mystery is another way of looking at the sequencing and staging. The first and second half of life, Scott Peck's 4 stages of spiritual growth. You can probably look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can look at the Enneagram. There are so many different ways of starting to get a roadmap for the journey. And I think that's really important because questions like these are always arising, and it gets really confusing, especially emotionally, and especially when we're under duress. How do we stay clear on where this journey is really leading us? And when things get difficult, how do we still see purpose in the pain so that we'll continue moving forward and not run back to an earlier position where we last felt safe? To keep moving forward is to have a sense. Go ahead, Brady.
Well, it depends. I mean, people will say when they encounter some catastrophe that moves them into the second half of life, no one raises their hand for that. No one volunteers. But in the second half of life, if they're, for those of us who are in the second half of life, hearing this, there's promise and there's hope and there's meaning. If any of us are well into the first half of life, this could be threatening. This could sound threatening. That what? I'm going to have to lose all of this or give up all this to find some meaning, when I'm finding so much meaning in my success and my, whatever. So, we hear this, and depending on where we're at in life, we hear this very different.
Great point. Great point.
I was thinking of this line on page 16 there. None of us go into the spiritual maturity completely of our own accord or by a totally free choice. We are led by mystery, which religious people rightly call grace. Can you speak a little bit about that line, like led by mystery? And I never thought of grace as being led by mystery. And I guess that's why I'm struggling with that line.
Oh, well, basically, he's saying the same thing that Brady just said. No one raises their hand for the uncertainty, the disturbance, or even the catastrophe or the trauma that life is going to serve up, at various points that are really going to catapult us into second half of life sensibilities if we're willing to go there. And so we're led by mystery. Mystery is the unknown. Mystery is the uncertain. We are, especially in first half of life, what are we mostly concerned with? Certainty, right? I mean, that's what we want more than anything. We want our investments to be solid. We want to know where we put our money. We want to know what job. We want to know what real estate. We want to know what market. Everything is about certainty because of the fear factor involved as we're building our platform. But when we move into the second half, we get more and more tolerant of uncertainty, more tolerant of mystery. And God's grace, God's love resides solely and completely in that unknown. There is no evidence for God's love. There's no precedent for God's love. You know, we either become convicted and convinced of it through experience or we don't. But the only way we're ever going to is because we're being led there into that deeper journey. But it's not something, the two might come into conflict. I just said it's good to have a map for the journey. It's good to have the overall shape of the journey and the milestones along the way. But at the same time, we can't know the journey. It's something that unfolds if we're willing to step out into the unknown. And so there's always that paradox. And like we talked about in 2 books ago, you know, if we are willing to let the horns of the paradox remain and not resolve the apparent contradiction by flopping down on one side or another, then we're really going to be able to move through them into a deeper truth on the other side. And all of these deepest parts of life present in a paradoxical way. And we have to let them remain unresolved. Living in mystery and living in uncertainty and learning to celebrate that is one of the paradoxes that we need to navigate if we're going to really get into the second half of life.
I like that part. I was thinking about the word grace, and I like Brady a couple of months back offered a definition of grace as something you extend to somebody that doesn't deserve it. And I really liked that definition, and I was kind of trying to tie that definition to the call to mystery or being called by the mystery, and I was kind of struggling with that. I don't know if I'm making sense here.
No, I think you are. You know, grace is usually defined as unmerited favor, which is basically what you just said, Brady said as well. It's unmerited favor. It is unconditional absolute love. And that doesn't compute with us. And it doesn't compute with anything that we've experienced in life. You know, love and acceptance is given based on performance. That's the way the world works. And so anything else is a friggin' mystery, right? I mean, basically, where does that come from? How does that even work? How is that fair? How is that just? I mean, you know, how can someone love me when I'm at my worst? And how am I supposed to love someone else who is attacking me and acting in obscene ways? That's the mystery. But if we can start to realize that's really what undergirds everything that we see in our universe, then we're on the second half of life journey.
You know, at the bottom of that page, I highlighted ones who have heard some deep invitation to something more and set out to find it by both grace, which is to me mystery, and daring. You know, it's the mystery of grace, and yet it's also the daring to take that journey, to go for something a little deeper, and that it is an invitation to step out in grace and in faith and daring.
Great point, Jerry. And really, when you think about it, grace and daring are 2 more horns of another paradox, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, grace is the sense that everything's going to be okay, even though we can't see it. And yet daring is the experience of risk at the same time.
Right.
Right. And that's the way we experience life.
Yep.
I had a bit of an experience recently that's evolved over time. There have been several things that have happened probably in the last few months that I was touched by, dismayed by, intrigued by, curious about, and also confused by. And continue to go forward, be present, be aware, take in what I was feeling led to access, you know, either in resources, something to read or songs or what have you. And I just kind of put it together by a recent conversation that I had with a very trusted friend. And that had some very difficult things to say to me. But it was said with such love and such tenderness that, and it took me a while, but I started realizing that these little chunks of things that God, the way I saw it was that God had set up some things in advance to prepare me to hear what she had to say to me. And it was actually alternately beautiful, terrifying, and opening up a whole new journey that I feel like there's no way that I can do this on my own. And so it's precipitated a real close drawing in to the God of my understanding.
That's beautiful.
So it's kind of like a, kind of a semi-climatic pause, and then, feel a little like Odysseus setting out into this unknown land.
Well, Judy, that's perfect. That's the second half of life. That's the hero's journey. That's the rite of passage. I mean, it's all right there in what you just said. That's great. I'm sorry, William, I cut you off.
I was going to tell Judy to just cut that friend off right there.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon.
Yeah. That's another way to go, Judy. That's another way to go.
You get what you pay for.
Sort of blows up the paradox, but it's another way to go.
Yeah, right.
But she'd miss you, William.
Okay, so wait a minute.
William, she'd miss you.
I hear you.
All right, we are at time. I don't know if it's just me, but it looks like Vaughn just put up a picture of Sandy. What in the heck is that?
Is that Sandy? Is that you?
Sure. So
Is that
looks
you?
like her.
That's me.
It does, doesn't it?
So frustrated, yeah.
It's on your website.
Where did you?
So check
Oh,
it out.
at your web.
On your website.
That's a little
Yeah.
creepy,
Stalking you.
Vaughn.
Really
Oh, so it is
creepy.
Sandy.
Vaughn, are
All
you
right.
stalking
It's better
again?
than a book in life.
That's a
Vaughn,
little
stop
creepy, Vaughn.
it.
William will
Come
be
into
the
the
cool
second
kid.
half of life, Vaughn.
Part of my second life.
Okay,
Creepy.
we have totally devolved now. I
It
think
helps. It helps.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this format worked pretty well.
Yeah.
Y'all like it?
I like it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
like it.
We will
like
keep-
it.
We will keep this going, and we'll do it this way. That was a great discussion, you guys. I just love the way that everything picked up and just kind of got outside my control. So that's good for me. Good job, y'all. Good job, y'all. Okay, let's. Where'd he go? There he is. He's right next to me. That's why I didn't see him. Pastor Scott, could you close us in prayer, my friend?
Absolutely. Father God, we're so grateful to come before you as we study, as we share, as we learn, as we grow, as we make our mistakes. You're a safe landing place, Lord. Your love is beyond the ability to explain it to anybody. It has to be experienced. Father, but we try and share our experiences. So as some of us enter into the second half of life, some of us still got a ways to go, and some of us have been there for a while now. Help us to understand what to do with the time that's still given to us, Lord. Help us to encourage each other, love each other, watch out for each other, and take care of each other, Lord, as you take care of us. It's in your holy and precious name we give our thanks and say our amens, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Daddy.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Dad.
Thanks,
Hi, Brady.
Brady.
Jordana.
Great discussion.
Jordana. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Pasta pasta.
Adieu, adieu, adieu. All right. And Jordana and Linda and Tony. Goodbye.
Bye, Dave. Bye, Linda. See you guys on Sunday.
See you guys on the weekend.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.